Hey there, Eileen Gilbo from The Real Las Vegas, today at Young Law Group, talking with Shane Jasmine Young all about wills. Hey there, it's Eileen Gilbo with The Real Las Vegas, and today we are sitting in the beautiful office of the Young Law Group. And the owner is Shane Jasmine Young, and we're going to have a conversation with her and find out all about her today. So, hello.
Hi,
How are
welcome,
you?
and thank you.
Yeah, your office is beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to share more about what we do.
Yeah, I have been to some of your events. You also host Women Decision Makers, and they're brilliant. I mean, you offer such value. I really do love it. So,
Thank you.
And we'll get into a little bit more of that later. So, the first thing I want to ask you is everybody has their Vegas origin story. Mine's super boring. I came here because my parents moved here. But what is your Vegas origin story?
So mine is kind of similar to yours. We moved here for my dad's job. So he was in the airline business and got a job as a CFO for a local Grand Canyon tour airline.
Yeah.
And we moved here when I was 9 and had no family here. So we moved from Texas, where we had tons of family, cousins, aunts, and uncles. We all lived in one neighborhood, so that was a bit of a shocker for me.
Bet.
And I didn't like it at first, but kind of like Vegas grows on you. I love it. Like I would never move anywhere else now. We've raised our family here. I met my husband here.
Right.
So there's a lot of, this is home. So
well, and it says a lot, honestly, that you went to law school, you got your degree, and you chose to open your business here. So, I mean, you definitely have made Las Vegas your home.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. We went to California. So my husband, Charles, and I met in high school. We met at a track meet in 1995. And so we've been together ever since. And we were both in California going to school, and he was also modeling. And my last year at Pepperdine, that's where I was going to school, my last year I found out I was pregnant. So we ended up having twins. So that was not like part of what we had planned. I was supposed to go right into law school, but I took a year off, and it worked out. It ended up working out time-wise because I graduated a year early from undergrad.
Yeah.
And then had them right after I graduated, stayed home with them for a year. We came back home because both of our families are here. And on their first birthday, I started law school.
Wow.
Here at UNLV's law school.
That's amazing. I don't know if I could have done twins.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot.
Well, I mean, you know what it's like to have a bunch of kids.
Right,
so
right.
That's one thing that we have in common is, we both have 5, but I think that's one reason that, just out the gate, God or the universe or whatever, the higher being, whatever you believe in, I think that was something that was just placed in our lives because otherwise we probably wouldn't have had more kids. But they were actually, the funny thing is the twins were the easiest out of all of them, the other ones. The last 3 were probably more work.
They're never going to see this.
Right.
You don't have to worry, about
I tell
it.
them that, though, sometimes, too. I'm like, I thought it was going to be easy to just have one after having twins.
Yeah.
But my third, Kaylin, she was just one of those, she was just demanding in a different way. I think maybe because the twins had each other, it was easier for them. They had a built-in playmate. But it is true that when my 4th daughter was born, Kaylin, my third, she kind of turned, like her personality shifted a little bit. So, yeah, it's definitely interesting to see the dynamic among all of them. Yeah, and we were talking earlier about our youngest.
Yes.
It's like that number 5. They just like to throw us for a little loop.
Yeah, they come out with, I have to be somewhere. They don't know where, but they're going to cause trouble all along the way.
And the rules don't apply to them.
No.
No.
No. Well, and they know that we're tired.
Yeah.
So that's
they take advantage. They take advantage of us. That's what that is.
We're tired. We don't have the energy. So they're like, oh, I smell weakness.
Right.
So let's take advantage of that weakness. Yeah,
That's
absolutely. So, okay, as I mentioned, we are sitting here in your office. How did you decide that you wanted not only to be a lawyer, I mean, but how did you decide to open your own law group?
So I knew from when I was probably 8 that I wanted to be a lawyer, and that's what I would tell people when they asked what I wanted to be when I grew up. But it was really reinforced when, after we moved here, and a few years later, my dad actually started his own airline. And you can actually see the picture of the airplane there on the wall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he started his own airline. He got financing, purchased airplanes, hired people, including an attorney to make sure that everything was set up as far as the corporate side. And unfortunately, that attorney and some other third parties basically conspired and took control of the company away. So they took control, kicked my dad out of control of his own business, and they ran it into bankruptcy, and we lost everything. So, everything was invested into this business. My dad was the breadwinner, so when he left his job, that was really all that we had. And he hired another attorney to file a malpractice lawsuit against that first firm. And unfortunately, after years of litigation, it went up to the Nevada Supreme Court. It was dismissed on a technicality, so a statute of limitations issue that basically said that he brought the claim too late. And I was the oldest, and I grew up seeing my dad go through this, and he would share a lot of his experience, and he would have me review legal documents and get my input. And I remember him sharing his experience with these attorneys and feeling like he never was really represented and advocated for, and he was having to do a lot of that, and he wasn't feeling heard. There wasn't a connection, and so that was just something that kind of was in the back of my mind as I went through school. And education was one of the things that my family placed a lot of value on, especially as immigrants. They came from South America, Guyana, as teenagers, and so they felt like as long as you have an education, you're empowered here, in the U.S. to be able to do whatever you want.
Right.
So I went to law school and got the job at the big fancy firm, and I thought, I made it. This is great. I was making good money, and that was important to me in terms of the stability, the financial stability that I didn't have growing up because my dad was an entrepreneur. And I soon realized, though, that being, in the big firm, that setting was not what was going to fulfill me.
Right.
And I didn't feel like my law degree was being used to its best use. And I did stay in private practice for a while. It was about 10 years. And then I had the opportunity to go in-house as the general counsel for a company here. So I did that for 2.5 years, which is a totally different experience, being in-house, working for one client. But it did teach me a lot of great things that have transferred over into our firm, sales, marketing, employment issues, HR, just how to run a business. Like, you can be a great lawyer, but if you have your own law firm, there's a completely other set of skills that you have to have in order to have a successful business. So it is hard to balance that at times. And thankfully, I have, with the help of my husband, who's also, a partner in the business with us. He's not an attorney, but he does the marketing and the operations. We've been able to be successful having our own firm. But it is something that he's always had since the time that I went to law school. He was like, oh yeah, you're going to open a firm. And I thought like, that's scary. I don't know. Like, I'd like to have a paycheck where I know I'm going to get paid. And I think that for me, it took me a while to get to where he was, because I tend to be afraid of failure, which most of us are, right? We don't like to think of opportunities to fail.
Right.
And that was really the fear that I had well, now it's not only me, we've got a family. We've got these kids to think about, and we can't both be entrepreneurs, because what if something happens? And
it makes you less risk averse, for sure.
Right. Yeah. And because I think of my history growing up, the experience that I had, it really shaped my perspective on certain things. And thankfully, the opportunity presented itself, and instead, and I can tell you, I can share that too.
Yeah.
When I was working as a general counsel, as I mentioned, I was there for about 2.5 years, and the company was in the process of basically being merged, or purchased by another larger business. And so I knew that that was going to happen at some point, but I thought it was going to happen, in January of 2018. Well, in July, I found out that I didn't have a job anymore. So I got laid off.
no.
Yeah, I got laid off, and we didn't have anything set up, for our firm. So at that point, I remember thinking, well, do I go look for another job, or is this the time to really just focus on what we want to do with this law firm?
Right.
So I think I spent probably 30 minutes thinking about it and talked to Charles, and he was like, let's do it. So he was
Yeah.
completely supportive, which you mentioned, your husband's like always been your
Oh, absolutely.
number one supporter. So with his support, we opened the firm, and it's been such a blessing. I mean, it's definitely got its challenges. It's hard, it's hard. There's a lot that you don't necessarily consider when you're
Right.
doing your own, you're doing your own thing, but it's opened up an opportunity for us as a family to be able to come together and work together. And they're not here today, but I have my oldest daughters are twins. They've been interning since they've been home, due to the pandemic. So they're learning about the business, and it's also a place where we can bring our other children.
Right.
They can come here and they can do their schoolwork, and they can be a part of what we're doing, the events that we put on. So as a family, it's been nice to be
Yeah.
able to have that. And then just being able to be in the community and really be me
Right.
and share information and really make things accessible for everyone in the community. So that's why we focus a lot on the education side, because
Yeah.
that's where it is. Knowledge is power.
Well, and so I am a little bit blown away because I think I met you in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And you did not seem like a newly opened business.
Yeah.
I mean, you, for lack of a better word, you had your shit together. I mean, I would not have ever known.
Mm-hmm.
I came to an event. I had mentioned Women Decision Makers is a free networking event for women. I mean, you don't have to be a business owner. You can be the CEO of your household. It doesn't, matter if you're working, not working, whatever it is, you can come to this networking event. And it's kind of transformed over the last, couple of years since you've been doing it. But I mean, it's just gotten better. And you're bringing in speakers who are adding high value, content to this group that you've started. And I'm amazed because most of the time people don't jump in with every ounce of their being to do something. They might tiptoe into something, but you went all in. And I mean, and it definitely shows because you've made an impact for sure.
Thank you.
But I have a question about family law. Or it's not family law.
Estate.
It's estate law. How did you go from all of the different facets of being a lawyer to doing estate law?
So one of the stories that I share when I do like events similar to Wine and Wills is I share the kind of the backstory. And my first case that I took as a new attorney was a pro bono case, and where I was volunteering my time, and the family unfortunately was going through probate. And the children came to us, and they didn't have the means to hire an attorney, so they were able to get representation through our firm, and they couldn't understand why they had to go to court because their father, who had passed away, had a trust. He had done his estate planning, and but it wasn't done properly.
Yeah.
And he had gone through a traditional experience where he met with an attorney. The attorney basically filled out form documents. They were very cookie cutter. He signed them. He took them home. Didn't really understand how his plan worked.
Right.
And all he knew was that he had a trust. And he told his kids, don't worry, I've taken care of everything. Well, he never reviewed his plan. He never updated his planning. He never tracked his assets. They weren't titled correctly.
Oh, no.
And when he died, years later, his family had to go through probate because the assets were not titled in the name of the trust and the planning wasn't done correctly. So
Yeah.
even simple things like he had named his wife at the time as a beneficiary on life insurance, on a life insurance policy, and that they separated, and she was still able to get that money as
Oh, wow.
as a beneficiary, and the children didn't feel like that was fair because they knew that that's not what their dad would have wanted.
Right.
But the documents didn't reflect that. He just didn't plan for all of the contingencies properly. He
Right.
thought that he was doing the right thing, and most people do, unfortunately. They think, well, I'm paying this attorney and everything's going to be done correctly. But,
Right.
that's when it comes to estate planning, that's usually a very typical case where it's a very cookie cutter transactional type of arrangement, and it ends up with people in courts, in conflict. So
Right.
I saw that as a first year attorney, and I was thinking like, wow, like that has to be malpractice. How can an attorney charge all that money and then the plan completely
Right.
fail? But I realized that that's just really how traditionally it's done. So it was from that point on where I took on other pro bono cases. The firm that I worked at didn't focus on estate planning, so it was one of the classes, like my favorite class actually in law school, but they didn't have a practice area set up for that, so I would take cases through the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada and volunteer, and then when I went to the in-house position, it was for a financial services firm, a company, and we were the IRA custodian of accounts. And so we would see a lot of times people would be inheriting these IRA accounts, and then they would call and they'd have questions
Yeah.
because, like their dad died and now they don't know what to do with these accounts. And then they'd have these other questions that they'd want to ask me because I was an attorney, but
Right.
I wasn't their attorney, and I couldn't advise them. So I was just seeing all these questions come up, and the burden that a lot of family members were dealing with after somebody died, a
Right.
loved one died. So when we started our firm, I knew that was something that I wanted to be able to serve families and business owners in particular, to make sure that they have the information, they
Yeah.
have the education, so that I'm not just telling them like, look here, just sign these documents, I'm your lawyer, trust me. I want them to understand the decisions that they're making and the options that they have, because there are lots of options. You're planning, even though our lives kind of seem to be parallel,
Right.
but your planning is going to look a lot different than my planning because your
Right.
goals are different, your
Right.
needs are different. So that's why we really focus attention on just making sure that the whole process from being educated first, that's why we do the webinars, Wine and Wills. We have events, and we've got the groups, the networking groups, to share what we do, but also connect people in the community to be able to really utilize all the resources that we have here.
Yeah.
Because we have some really, really great resources,
Right.
a lot of great professionals and business owners and people that really are experts, in their field, and I want to make sure that we have access to all of that.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking about even before we started recording, is that you say the word lawyer,
Right.
and it, depending on who you are and what your experience has been in life, all of a sudden the hairs, like on the back of your neck kind of stand up like, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. I have to go see a lawyer.
Right.
And I may not have come to you as an estate planning lawyer, but I came for a networking event. I saw you. I like you. I love the information that you share, and you're not asking for anything in return. You're saying, I want to get the information out. if you think that I'm a good fit for you, I would love to work with you.
Right.
And I think that's so important because nobody wants to discuss their mortality.
Right.
I mean, because of you, I looked at my will and I'm like, oh shit,
Yeah.
we need to, I mean, I had a will, but
Yeah.
so many things have changed, you know, since we wrote that.
Right.
I don't even think our youngest daughter is on there.
Right.
You know, and it's like, uh-oh.
Right.
You know, so, I mean, that was one of my plans today as I, you know, came into your office was to set up an appointment.
Good.
Because it's not something that generally you want to think about, but you make it seem very normal. This is something that, especially, you know, I hate to say it, but as I have 5 kids, my will should be rock solid.
Right.
You know, I should not be leaving things to chance. So, you know, but if I had not met you, I wouldn't even be considering.
Right.
I would have gone on a website somewhere and printed some documents and called it a day.
Yeah.
You know, and there's so much more involved, and I only know that because of sitting down with you and
Well,
having conversations.
Thank you. That makes me feel. It makes me feel good to know that just even coming to a networking event had opened your eyes to that.
Yeah.
Because you just never know. You never know how the information will be received or
Right.
when it will be received. Sometimes it takes, you know, several times for people to hear certain things. And something that you brought up also was, you know, having a will. And most people believe that having a will is enough to
Right.
take care of things. And that's a common misconception. Just to kind of give you a little bit of background, a will really only deals with the disposition of your assets. So it just says who gets what when you die. So
Right.
it doesn't address the things of like incapacity. So if you were in an accident and you couldn't make medical decisions for yourself, you know, who would step in and be able to do that? And even though you're married, you presume that your husband would be the one that just automatically is authorized to do that.
I'm not sure
And-
about that. I
yeah.
don't know if he wants that, to be honest. I
Right.
don't know if he wants that because he would keep me alive forever.
Right.
And I'm like, nope.
Yeah, and that's such a great, you know, that's another great point. So
Yeah.
one is it's not automatic. So your spouse doesn't just get to automatically step in and make decisions unless you've legally authorized them.
Right.
And think about it, you know, there's a couple of reasons why that is. One is the law does not presume that your spouse has your best interests at heart or that you would want your spouse making decisions for you.
How interesting.
And just think about it from this perspective. You know, you're happily married, but there are people that get married and then they separate, but they don't get a divorce. So would you want your estranged spouse making decisions for you?
I
No,
guess I
right?
didn't think
Probably not.
I didn't think
Yeah.
about that.
So that's why it's just like all of these nuances, all of these
Right.
contingencies really need to be planned for. And when it comes to a will, also another misconception is that all you need is to have a will and it's set like, oh, I don't have that much. I've only got my bank accounts or my house
Right.
and it's just going to go to my kids. Well, it will go to your kids, but it has to go through probate first.
Yeah, eventually.
Uh-huh. Right. A will does not avoid probate. So
Right.
a will actually becomes a public record. It has to be filed with the probate court. And then anyone can have access to that. So that probate process is public, it's expensive,
Right.
it takes a long time, and the assets end up just going to your heirs at law. So in your case, it would be your children. But in some cases, it would go to people's family members who they wouldn't want receiving their assets. So
It's rough. I've been in probate court dealing with, you know, for clients who have been purchasing houses that are in probate. And I mean, the things that you see in probate court when these homes go up for sale, sometimes it's heartbreaking.
yeah.
You know, because family members are fighting,
Yeah.
and it's out there for everybody to see, and it is not pretty. So I mean, yeah, you want to avoid probate as much as you possibly can.
Right.
So, one last question, and I so appreciate you taking this time with me, and we're going to link all of your events to the bottom of this video so that people can sign up for the Wine and Wills. And they can sign up for Women Decision Makers. It's here locally in Las Vegas. And so my last question is, what do you wish people knew about Las Vegas, about living here, that you don't think that they know?
I think that it's important for people to know that there are real people that live here and real families and real businesses and business owners and a thriving community.
Yeah.
I think, when people are like, oh, you live in Vegas, like they only see the strip.
Right.
But yeah, there are actual lives that are being, we're living here.
Right.
And I think that that's probably what it is. And that it's a great, well, on one hand, I want people to know that. And then on another hand, I don't want them to, because I want to keep that little secret, to
Right.
us,
Right.
for us, because, I love our community. I think we have a really, really great
Yeah.
sense of just overall family here that people don't realize. They
Right.
don't realize that you can raise children here and they can grow up to be great human beings and contributors to a society. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah, so it's if you can raise 5 children in this community, it must be okay, right?
Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we've both done it.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah.
2 stories right
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, and again, we'll get all of the links below this video so that people can meet you, because I think you're going to change a lot of minds on what it means to actually go through this process, because you really do make it comfortable and you give all the information. So I feel like I actually know what that process entails, and it takes a lot of the fear away.
Yeah, that's the hope. That really is the hope. And
Yeah.
thank you. It really is an honor. It's
Yeah,
my pleasure.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I will see you the next time on The Real Las Vegas. Bye.